Welcome to the Green Hour, Khalid Malik's Morning Jam on FM91 every Wednesday at 10 a.m. For previous episodes, make sure you're checking out our FM91 YouTube channel, The Green Hour. Joining us this morning, founding member of Climate Action Pakistan and an environment policy specialist, Dawar, with over 5 years of experience in policy analysis, environmental research, ESG and sustainability, pollution mitigation and public policy communications. He has keen interest in linkages between climate impacts and public health. Do heat waves cause forest fires? Joining us is Dawar. Good morning. Welcome to the show.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
That's a very sort of specific question. Do heat waves cause forest fire? But before we get there, I feel as though we talk about seasons. And we talk about, which season are we at right now? And I don't know whether it's just me, but I feel like we fall into this confusion. What season are we in at the moment? Is it monsoon? Is it not monsoon? How do you interpret that?
It's summer, but it's pre-monsoon summer.
Yeah.
That's what we usually call April and May. And June's already begun, so you'll have monsoon from end of June. But usually what we see is that May and April also have some form of rainfall, thunderstorms, dust storms, whatever. This year has been a little special. We haven't had any of that. The rivers are dry. So I'm really not sure what to specify how much here.
So can you describe how season change in Pakistan? So throughout if we start say in Jan, let's go through the year. Can you give us a bit of rundown of the seasons that we should expect, because obviously it's not the case anymore, and how has that changed?
We should have a winter. We should have a very pleasant spring, followed by a little dry summer, June, May, and then monsoon, of course, which our land is sort of known for.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you have autumn and winter again. But those patterns have been going haywire, and we know the reasons, we know why it is happening, we have forecasts as well. But each year when it is actually happening on the ground, you start questioning, did this happen before? Pehle kabhi hua? And then you suddenly shocked that you look at the 60-year records since Pakistan Met Department is recording them, and you're like, no, this hasn't happened before. So are we supposed to live differently? Are we supposed to meet each other, work differently? What to do now? So that's what's happening.
And what's in sort of layman's terms, what's causing these extreme conditions?
So there are multiple things. I think to break it down to the big pieces, it's of course climate change, driven by greenhouse gases. But also the region is sort of going through different climatic patterns, and shockingly, this was supposed to be a slightly cooler year. And what we know about the weather patterns is that there is a La Nina, El Nino cycle that repeats, and this is a La Nina year. It's supposed to be cooler.
This is La Nina?
La Nina.
La Nina.
These are Latin Spanish terms, and this is basically a cycle the entire Earth globe goes through. It's supposed to be a cooler year, and similarly 2018 was supposed to be a cooler year, but because you've heated up the planet so much, the cooler year mixed with the dry weather sort of heats up the Earth so much, your land surface is so heated up that your entire weather pattern is completely changed. And one of the things that's the deepest impact no one's right now talking about is the lack of snowfall we have. Now, Gilgit, Kashmir, Chitral, these regions haven't had proper snowfall in 2 years. And
so, proper snowfall ki baat uska kya matlab hai, proper snowfall?
At 100%. So you have a percentage change which is as much as minus 60%. And what is happening is that your glaciers are depleting. That's already happening. But snowfall is softer ice, so it melts early season, like March and April. Because you've had no snowfall for 2 years, your rivers are dry during March and April. So that's causing agricultural losses, that's causing lower mango production in Sindh. That's a big issue right now. And then you also have load shedding because your hydropower isn't working up to steam.
Wow.
So it's no one's right now talking about the snowfall pattern, but
this is the first time we've brought it up here on the Green Hour, So then where do we even start? Because I mean, this is something we've always discussed on Green. Now, where do we start, and how do we? What, in your opinion, then is the starting point?
I think we've crossed the stage of saying that, let's slow it down a little bit, especially for contexts like Pakistan or Bangladesh or India. We've crossed that stage. Now is the stage that you prepare your infrastructure, your people, help them adapt, make them resilient. And a lot of people, I as an environmentalist, have often criticized your thermal energy use, particularly your coal energy use. And Pakistan still wants to expand a lot of it because it's a little polluting and it's dirty, causes public health impact. But I'm confused, how do you power your cities? I don't have the necessary answer from the state or from key policymakers. You have to power your cities so every individual has some sort of access to cooling. And by cooling, I actually mean air conditioners. The temperatures in Jek Baba, Larkana, these are 50-degree temperatures.
Yeah.
How do people survive there without cooling, without freezers, without ice?
Do we have any examples from other parts of the world that may have implemented?
Yeah. So China and India are doing a bit of work on this. They're using mini grids powered by solar energy. Those are expensive investments, and our country doesn't have that sort of money right now. But maybe in the next 5 to 10 years, we get on this particular train as well. But that's the way to power these cities, which are also rural areas, far off, but also need energy. And right now there's like 12-hour, 14-hour load shedding in these areas. How can you survive this heat right now?
It's meant to be 3 hours, but okay, 12, 14 hours it is then. But with the current sort of seasonal shifts and extreme temperatures, there's these waves, there's these heat waves that come and go. Was it like this last year as well? I know there were heat waves, but it seems to be more frequent.
This is the longest known heat wave recorded in Pakistan's history. Pakistan's record began in 1960. Before that, all the subcontinent's records are with the Indian Met Department, which has over 100 years of record. And even in their record, this is the longest heat wave ever. So it started on 11th March, and by today 15th, the Met Department has finally said that heat wave conditions are going to be broken because of certain rainstorms in the northern Pacific.
We just, as of today, there was this prediction of rain, but still dry weather for Sindh.
Dry weather for Sindh till end of June. So that's still going to be happen. You have rains happening in Mumbai right now. So that means that certain southern Sindh parts will get some rain even in this spell. But Karachi should have rain in early July.
We're talking to Dawar this morning, founding member of Climate Action Pakistan, on the Green Hour. We're going to head to a break. Be back straight after. Welcome back to the Green Hour. Dawar joining us this morning, founding member of Climate Action Pakistan. We're talking heat waves, we're talking extreme seasonal shifts. How has this impacted our well-being and our health?
I had to walk here. I was really sweaty while doing that walk. So that the sort of impact, I think, that on the largest scale is happening with everyone. And people like me who have access to cars or transportation are still lucky. But I imagine people who are like daily wage laborers and have to work in this heat, it's probably causing them a lot of health issues as well. And then you have other examples that kids, when we were used to be kids and you had more greenery and lesser roads, people used to play outside. I don't see people, especially kids, playing outside anymore. So these are different impacts, and on a daily basis, it's primarily to do with health, and people who are afraid to be affected by it are considering staying indoors all the time. That also leads to, like, you have mental health issues, you have obesity when you don't have enough activity. So the loop is pretty big. It can go in any direction you look at it.
And I think that's when you're kind of almost forced to sort of think differently. With what we have and what we're going through. How do we shift our own seasons? Internally at home, and how do we adapt? Which is kind of, I don't know. It's difficult to do because you're so drained just because of the heat wave and the whole heat situation that you just, I'll deal with that tomorrow. I'll just sit where I am right now.
So I'll give you a sort of little example that I talk about a lot with people, is that in parts of rural Punjab and rural Sindh, and especially places where you have the national highway, there's a lot of load shedding.
Right.
But people still have to sleep at night and they cannot do it indoors in the heat. So what they do, they put their manjis on the green belt in between the national highway. Because traffic is going to be buzzing across. So each time there's a big car crossing with winds pooping in. So they've adapted with this logic that this is what we are supposed to do because you don't have electricity and you have a lot of heat. So you have consistent wind coming. In cities, I tend to think that we've trapped ourselves into a particular lifestyle and there's an inertia that is stopping you from evolving beyond it. And in many cases, it could be simple examples like putting your old wind catchers back into your buildings that trap air and bring cool air into the building. But since you build blocky houses, like Soviet-style houses, and you're stuck with that architecture, you haven't been able to do that. So I think with the seasons changing, you will have to adapt it in ways that are more or less common sense. And there's no way going to be out of it. You can't cool entire cities. You don't have the energy, neither does the affordability angle work here. So
earlier you spoke about different uses of solar and solar energy as they've done. I think you mentioned India and you mentioned another country, China, for cooling purpose and so on. And you're a specialist in environment policy. Is there something in place, or is there a discussion underway? How do we introduce sort of solar energy en masse and or hydro or wind sort of sources of energy? Is there something?
So there's Pakistan right now uses minimal renewable energy, but right now in the pipeline you have about 1,000 megawatt of wind energy and equal amount of solar energy in the process of being constructed. And this is very cheap power. This is going to be cheaper than local coal. And the good thing about it is that you have certain parts in the country which has a very high number of sunny days. So you'll have a lot of supply and energy coming.
Right.
At the same time, there has to be an understanding that our current energy mix, which is largely dependent on thermal energy, has to sort of move or shift away towards encouraging or incentivizing more renewable energy. What, for example, I'll give you an example that Pakistan we have a lot of gas reserves. So the Sui gas fields, the Mari gas fields. So for the past 60 years, we're like, this is unlimited. Let's keep on building more gas-driven power plants. Because they thought it was unlimited when it isn't. We know that how gas shortages in the domestic sector and households have been affecting us now.
Yeah.
So a lot of investment basically went into this direction without forecasting how long this will last. But at the same time, if you had taken a step towards solar like 15-20 years ago, those power plants, those in that infrastructure would be powering a lot of electric stoves. So you would need gas stoves at home. So there needs to be there is planning at the government level for 5 to 10 years, but I think a lot more contextual planning or a lot more planning that involves looking at what we will be in 2030 or 2040 needs to be done. And the number one example for that would be water shortages and heat. Those are the two things that you need to look into while planning any sort of energy. And because solar and wind is not going to be dependent on water or your fuel source access, that is where you go then. So we hope that that's the right way to, and I'm sure with the electricity becoming more expensive, that's what everyone else is going to start doing.
And is it being looked into?
It is to an extent. Okay, it is the government. What the government can do is create more incentives. But at the end of the day, it cannot get into the business of putting more power stations. It attracts private sector. It puts those stations. Private sector thinks it's attractive investment, and that's how it happens. I'm not sure how much people are into investing in Pakistan right now with the risks and everything. So that is also another thing that is involved in this picture. That, for example, India during the Paris Agreement, and this is 2015, India was one of the biggest deniers. They said, we're not going to sign up. We're a developing country. We need coal. We're going to need oil to run our economy. And this became a big roadblock. No one was willing to backtrack from India's side because India was fronting these developing countries. Even from our perspective, we need the fuel to develop. So what happened was that the European Union and the US basically came forward and said that we're going to give you patents for solar technology. This is your incentive.
Okay.
Now agree to the Paris Agreement. That's how it was done. So if you are a developing country like us, we need to seek international incentives and investment to develop our renewable energy. And at the same time, we need to be looking into what we can do locally. And there's a lot that can be done locally. There's biofuels, there's biogas, then there's solar, wind, to an extent small hydropower projects can still be done. So this is where we should be heading for the next 20 years.
Nice. We're talking to Dawar Butt this morning, founding member of Climate Action Pakistan, heading to a break and be back. This is the Green Hour with Dawar Butt this morning. Okay, our segment Quickfire is about to begin. Let's get straight into it. Davi, ready? Here is your first question, your first Quickfire. Heat waves are caused by?
Climate patterns.
Climate change is caused by?
Greenhouse gases primarily from humans.
Heat waves are bad because?
You can't walk outside.
First-hand experience this morning. The biggest change that hotter weather will cause in people's living conditions is?
The reasons or the times you can go outdoors.
Top 3 things to make ourselves cooler.
So, ourselves cooler, I think we should read more. We should...
Read more?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, I'm making myself appear more cooler to people. So, read more, probably listen to people more and empathize. But as a human body, I don't think how much we can do. Probably drink more cold water.
Yeah. We can't even do ice bath. We can do an ice bath. Top 3 things to make our cities cooler.
Plant trees, maybe reduce the amount of concrete in the cities, and of course have lesser number of vehicles because these are like small engines heating up the city and environment as well. So those are the 3 things I think we'll have to do.
That was Quickfire on Green Hour with Dawar Butt. As a sort of takeaway, what's kind of the biggest lesson for you and for all of us, and what can we begin to do in our lives? Because you said there's no kind of well, let's resolve this. It's more of sort of like how do we adjust to this and sort of minimize the damage, as it were. What's the biggest lesson?
So, by the way, started off with if forest fires are being caused by heat waves, and I think I didn't mention it enough that in a way your cities and your forests, all sort of vegetation is very prone to getting burnt because of the heat. And one thing that we found out recently is that there's a lot of human-led fires that are happening in the country. So number one, we'll have to criminalize this. We'll have to place in strict penalties that discourage people from even operating into these areas during this season. On the other side, you'll have to go beyond criminal penalties. You will have to make sure that you're not just blasting out the depressing consequences of climate change.
Right.
You'll have to start preparing this generation that these are the steps that you need to take to survive, and also to build in a better way that will enable the next generation to also survive. So that means a lot of influence in the education curriculum. That means your politicians, your policymakers coming on TV talking about it consistently. And on a daily basis, people consume entertainment and social media the most. So those are the platforms I think we'll have to target our awareness messaging, your public communications that prepare people that so heat wave is about to come. What do? You start staying indoors more, but at the same time, for the next 10 years, start planting trees around your houses so you can still come out and sit outdoors in the shade. So those are sort of messages that we need to be bringing out, and hopefully I interact with a lot of people, and every year there's an increasing sort of awareness and also an increasing urgency to do something. So that is where we are, and I hope that translates into a better Pakistan by 2030.
And it's that consistency that we feel is key, which is why we're passionate about the Green Hour. Dawar Butt, thanks very much for joining us. Dawar Butt is on Instagram under Lahore Wala.
Yeah.
And on Twitter as well.
The Lahore Wala. Yeah.
The Lahore Wala. Dawar joining us this morning, founding member of Climate Action Pakistan and an environment policy specialist. This is the Green Hour. See you next time. Good morning.